The world stopped. It wasn't a sudden halt, like the flick of a switch, but more like the slow realization that something was wrong. People looked up at the sky, their faces pale with confusion and fear. Above them, in the vast expanse of space, an enormous alien ship had appeared. It wasn't small or subtle, it was massive, bigger than anything anyone had ever seen. The ship was black, so dark it seemed to swallow the light around it. It didn't reflect sunlight or glow with any kind of energy. Instead, it loomed silently, casting a shadow over Earth both literally and figuratively. At first, no one knew what to do. Social media exploded with pictures and videos of the ship, taken from every corner of the globe. News channels interrupted regular programming to show live footage of the mysterious object hanging in orbit. Scientists scrambled to analyze it, but their instruments couldn't make sense of what they were seeing. Politicians held emergency meetings behind closed doors, trying to figure out how to respond. And ordinary people, mothers, fathers, children, workers, they all stared at the sky, wondering if this was the end. Then came the message. It wasn't delivered through fancy technology or hidden codes. It was broadcast directly into every device on the planet. TVs, radios, phones, even car stereos. The voice that spoke was cold and mechanical, devoid of emotion. Surrender your species, it said, each word sharp and final, or face annihilation. That was it. No explanation, no reasoning, just two options, neither of which sounded good. Panic spread faster than anyone could have imagined. Streets filled with people, shouting, crying, running. Some tried to flee to nowhere in particular, as if distance could protect them from what was coming. Others barricaded themselves inside their homes, praying for some miracle to save them. Governments issued statements urging calm, but their words felt hollow against the backdrop of chaos. In Washington, D.C., a group of experts gathered in a secure underground facility known as the National Crisis Center. This wasn't the first time humanity had faced threats from beyond Earth, but it was certainly the most dire. The room buzzed with activity scientists typing furiously on laptops, military officers barking orders into headsets, diplomats arguing over the best course of action. At the center of it all stood Rachel Monroe, a linguist who specialized in ancient languages. She wasn't used to being in such high-pressure situations, but her skills made her invaluable now. Rachel was in her mid-30s, with short brown hair and glasses perched on her nose. Her usual calm demeanor was shaken, though she did her best to hide it. She sat at a desk, cluttered with papers and devices, staring intently at her laptop screen. Something about the alien message bothered her. It wasn't just the content. It was the delivery. There was something beneath the surface, a faint pattern hidden within the static of the transmission. Most people wouldn't have noticed it, but Rachel did. Years of studying obscure languages had trained her to pick up on subtle details others missed. Next to her stood Daniel Carter, a colonel in the U.S. Army. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with graying hair and a stern expression. Unlike Rachel, he thrived under pressure. His job was to keep everyone focused and moving forward, no matter how bleak things looked. Right now, he leaned over her shoulder, watching as she worked. "What are you looking at?" he asked, his tone brisk but not unkind. "There's something here," Rachel replied, pointing at the screen. "It's faint, but it's there, a pattern. I think it's part of their language." Daniel frowned. "You mean they're hiding something?" "Maybe," Rachel said. "Or maybe it's unintentional. Either way, it could tell us more about them. If we can decode it, we might find a way to talk back." Daniel straightened up, considering her words. Time was running out. The aliens had given humanity less than 72 hours to comply with their demand. Every second counted. "Do what you need to do," he said finally, "but hurry." As Rachel dove deeper into the data, another person joined the conversation. Dr. Emily Dawson, a neuroscientist, approached them cautiously. She was younger than both Rachel and Daniel, with curly blonde hair and a nervous energy that made her seem constantly on edge. Her project, codenamed Mind, was one of the most advanced AI systems ever created. Designed to mimic human thought processes, it had shown incredible potential in understanding and adapting to new information. However, it was still experimental, and Emily wasn't sure it was ready for something like this. "I heard you found something in the signal," Emily said, glancing at Rachel's screen. "If you want, I can run it through Mind. It might be able to help." Rachel hesitated. Using an untested AI system carried risks, but they didn't have many options. "All right," she said after a moment. "Let's try it." Emily quickly set up a connection between Rachel's laptop and Mind's mainframe. Within seconds, the AI began processing the data. Lines of code scrolled across multiple monitors, and graphs popped up showing patterns that hadn't been visible before. Everyone in the room watched in awe as Mind worked its magic. For the first time since the aliens arrived, there was a glimmer of hope. "What is it doing?" Daniel asked, clearly impressed but also wary. "It's analyzing the structure of the message," Emily explained. "Not just the words, but the underlying logic. Aliens think differently than we do, so we need to understand how they process information." And then what? Daniel pressed. Can it translate it? That's the goal, Emily said, but it's not just about translation. If we can figure out how they communicate, we might be able to send a response. Something they'll understand. Rachel nodded, her eyes fixed on the screen. If we can talk to them, maybe we can negotiate, or at least buy ourselves some time. Hours passed as mind continued its analysis. The tension in the room grew thicker with each passing minute. Finally, the AI produced results. What it revealed was astonishing. The pattern Rachel had detected wasn't random noise, it was a form of communication layered beneath the surface-level threat. More importantly, it suggested internal divisions among the aliens. Some factions wanted immediate destruction, while others seemed hesitant, almost reluctant. This changes everything. Rachel murmured, sharing the findings with Daniel and Emily. They're not united. There's conflict within their ranks. Daniel's jaw tightened. If that's true, we can use it to our advantage. But how? Emily asked. We can't exactly walk up to them and start sowing discord. No, Daniel agreed. But we can craft a message that plays on their weaknesses. Make them question each other. Force them to doubt their own mission. Rachel turned back to her laptop, her mind racing. For the first time since the crisis began, she felt a spark of determination. They weren't powerless. They had tools, knowledge, and ingenuity. And if they played their cards right, they might just stand a chance. Outside, the alien ship still hung ominously in the sky. Its presence was a constant reminder of the danger looming over humanity. But inside the crisis center, a plan was beginning to take shape. A plan born out of desperation, but also out of hope. Hope that even in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity could find a way to survive. The clock ticked louder than it should have. In the dimly lit room of the National Crisis Center, every second felt heavier than the last. Rachel Monroe sat hunched over her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she worked to refine. The data mined had uncovered the alien transmission was no longer just a threat. It was a puzzle, one that held the key to humanity's survival. Beside her, Daniel Carter paced back and forth, his boots clicking against the tiled floor. He wasn't used to waiting, especially when the stakes were this high. Emily Dawson hovered nearby, her eyes darting between the monitors displaying minds, analysis, and the holographic projection of the alien ship. She chewed nervously on her thumbnail, a habit she hadn't been able to shake since childhood. Despite her outward anxiety, her mind was sharp, processing every piece of information as it came in. We're onto something, she said, finally, breaking the tense silence. This pattern. It's like they're speaking two languages. At once, one is for show the threat, but the other is more subtle. It's almost like they're arguing with themselves. Daniel stopped pacing and turned to face her. Arguing? You mean there's disagreement among them? Exactly, Emily replied. Not everyone on that ship agrees with the plan to destroy us. Some factions seem eager to attack, but others are holding back. If we can exploit that division, we might be able to turn them against each other. Rachel nodded, her focus still on the screen. That's what I've been thinking too. But how do we do it? We can't just send a random message and hope it works. We don't need random, Daniel said firmly. We need calculated. A message that hits their weak points without tipping our hand. Something that makes them question why they're here in the first place. Emily glanced at him, her brow furrowing. You're talking about psychological warfare. I'm talking about survival, Daniel shot back. If we play this right, we won't have to fight them head-on. We'll let them tear themselves apart. Rachel leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. Her head was pounding from hours of staring at numbers and symbols, but she couldn't afford to stop now. MIND's already identified some of the key elements in their communication, she said. It's not just about words, it's about structure, logic, even emotion. They use patterns to convey meaning, much like we do. If we can replicate those patterns, we might be able to create a response that resonates with them. That's risky, Emily warned. If we get it wrong, we could make things worse. And if we do nothing, we're dead anyway. Daniel interjected. We don't have the luxury of caution. Not anymore. Rachel sighed, knowing he was right. There was no time to debate. The aliens had set a deadline less than 48 hours and every moment counted. She turned back to her laptop and began typing again, feeding mind additional instructions. Let's start small, she said. We'll craft a simple message, something neutral that doesn't escalate the situation. Then we'll see how they react. Emily nodded and moved to assist, her earlier hesitation giving way to determination. Together, they worked to translate the alien patterns into a coherent message. It wasn't easy. Every decision required careful consideration. Every symbol had to be placed just right. But slowly, a response began to take shape. Meanwhile, Daniel kept an eye on the larger picture. He coordinated with military personnel stationed around the globe, ensuring that Earth's defenses were ready in case negotiations failed. Though he remained outwardly calm, his mind raced with worst-case scenarios. What if the aliens ignored their message? What if they attacked before the response could be sent? He pushed those thoughts aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. Finally, After hours of intense effort, the message was complete. It wasn't long or elaborate, but it carried weight. Using the patterns identified by Mind, Rachel and Emily had crafted a reply that acknowledged the aliens' presence while subtly challenging their unity. The final line was particularly bold. Your demands lack clarity. To whom shall we surrender? Daniel, read it aloud, his voice steady, despite the gravity of the situation. It's direct, he said, but will it work? It has to, Rachel replied softly, because if it doesn't, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Everyone in the room understood the consequences of failure. With the message prepared, the team transmitted it into space, aiming directly for the alien ship. Then they waited. Seconds stretched into minutes, and minutes into hours. The tension was unbearable. No one spoke. The only sounds were the hum of computers and the occasional shuffle of feet. Outside, the world held its breath, watching and waiting for any sign of a response. When the reply finally came, it wasn't what anyone expected. Instead of another broadcast, the aliens sent a single question, transmitted directly to the crisis center. Who speaks for you? The words appeared on the main monitor, stark and unadorned. For a moment, no one moved. Then Rachel stood up, her heart pounding in her chest. She walked over to the table where Mind's portable device lay dormant and picked it up. Turning to face the camera that would relay their response, she spoke clearly and without hesitation. This does, she said, placing the device on the table. And if you want to negotiate, surrender. You'll have to tell us to whom. Her words echoed through the room, met with stunned silence. Even Daniel looked surprised, though he quickly masked it with a nod of approval. Emily stared at the monitor, her hands trembling slightly. Had they gone too far, or had they struck a nerve? For several agonizing moments, there was no response. The aliens seemed to be deliberating, their silence stretching longer than anyone anticipated. Finally, the transmission ended abruptly, leaving the humans alone with their uncertainty. What now? Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel crossed his arms, his expression grim. Now we wait. And prepare for whatever comes next. Rachel returned to her seat, her mind racing. She knew they had taken a huge risk, but she also knew it was necessary. The aliens weren't invincible. They had doubts, divisions, weaknesses. If humanity could exploit those flaws, they might stand a chance. As the hours passed, the team continued monitoring the situation, analyzing every detail of the exchange. Mind processed the new data, searching for clues about the aliens' intentions. Meanwhile, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched not just by the aliens, but by something deeper, something ancient. Whatever these beings were, they weren't acting on impulse. Their actions were deliberate, calculated, and that made them all the more dangerous. Despite the uncertainty, Rachel allowed herself a small measure of hope. They had faced extinction and fought back, refusing to bow down without a fight. That alone was a victory. However small, humanity wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. The silence from the alien ship was deafening. It wasn't just the absence of communication, it was the weight of uncertainty pressing down on everyone in the crisis center. Rachel Monroe sat at her desk, staring at the blank monitor where the last transmission had appeared. Her hands rested lightly on the keyboard, but she didn't type. There was nothing to say. Not yet. The ball was in the aliens' court now, and all humanity could do was wait. Daniel Carter stood near the window, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. He rarely showed emotion, but the tension in his posture betrayed his unease. Outside, the alien vessel remained perfectly still, its dark surface reflecting no light. It was like a shadow hanging over the earth, an ominous reminder of the power imbalance between humanity and its visitors. Daniel glanced at his watch for the 100th time that hour. How long has it been? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Almost 6 hours, Emily Dawson replied. She sat across the room, her laptop open but untouched. Her eyes were fixed on the holographic projection of the alien ship floating in the center of the table. The image rotated slowly, almost hypnotically, as if mocking their helplessness. They're taking their time, she added, her voice tinged with frustration. They're stalling, Daniel said sharply. Trying to figure out how to respond, Rachel looked up from her screen, her expression thoughtful. Or maybe they're arguing, she suggested. We hit a nerve with that last message. If there are divisions among them, we might have made things worse for them. Emily nodded slowly. That's possible. But what happens if they decide to ignore us altogether? Or worse, if they attack? We'll deal with that when it comes, Daniel said firmly. His tone left no room for debate, but Rachel noticed the faint lines of stress around his eyes. Even he couldn't hide the strain of waiting. As the hours dragged on, the team kept themselves busy reviewing data and refining their strategies. Mind continued analyzing every scrap of information they had about the aliens, searching for patterns or weaknesses that could be exploited. Rachel worked alongside Emily, feeding new parameters into the AI system. They were determined to stay one step ahead, even if it felt like they were grasping at straws. Finally, after nearly 12 hours of silence, the aliens responded. The transmission came without warning, flashing onto the main monitor in stark, angular symbols. Rachel leaned forward immediately, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she translated the message using MIND's algorithms. Everyone in the room held their breath, waiting for the translation to appear. When the words finally materialized, they were chillingly simple. Your defiance is noted. Prepare for consequences. Daniel clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. That's not much of an answer, he muttered under his breath. It's a threat, Emily said, her voice trembling slightly. They're not backing down. Rachel shook her head, her brow furrowed in concentration. Wait, look at this. She pointed to a section of the transmission that Mind had flagged as unusual. Unlike the rest of the message, which was cold and mechanical, this part contained subtle variations in the pattern, almost like hesitation. I think someone on their side is having second thoughts, she explained. This isn't unanimous. They're divided. That doesn't change the fact that they're still threatening us, Daniel said bluntly. We need to push harder. Show them we're not afraid. Rachel hesitated, her mind racing. She knew Daniel was right, they couldn't afford to back down now, but she also knew that provoking the aliens too aggressively could have disastrous consequences. They needed to strike a delicate balance, challenging the aliens' authority while avoiding outright hostility. It was a gamble, but one they had to take. Let's send another message, she said finally. Something stronger this time. We'll acknowledge their threat, but we'll also remind them of their own weaknesses. If they're divided, they can't afford to make mistakes. Emily nodded, her earlier fear giving way to determination. Together, the two women began crafting the new response. This time, they focused on exploiting the fractures within the alien ranks. Using MIND's insights, they embedded subtle cues in the message designed to amplify existing doubts and disagreements. The goal wasn't just to communicate, it was to manipulate. The process took hours, but when the final version was ready, Rachel felt a flicker of confidence. The message was bold, unapologetic, and calculated to provoke a reaction. Your unity is fragile, it read. Your purpose, unclear. Surrender to us, and we will grant you peace or continue your war, and watch your empire crumble. Daniel read the message aloud, his voice steady and commanding. It's risky, he admitted, but it's our best shot. With the message prepared, the team transmitted it into space, aiming directly for the alien ship. Then they waited. Once again, the tension in the room thick enough to cut with a knife. No one spoke. The only sounds were the hum of computers and the occasional rustle of papers. Outside, the world watched and waited, holding its collective breath. Hours passed with no response. The alien ship remained ominously silent, its presence a constant reminder of the danger looming over humanity. Just when it seemed like the aliens had decided to ignore them, another transmission arrived. This time, the tone was different, not softer, exactly, but more measured. The mechanical voice that had delivered the initial ultimatum was replaced by something deeper, almost weary. We withdraw, it stated simply. Your offer has been considered. We shall depart, but know this, we will return when you are ready. The words hung in the air, leaving everyone stunned. For a moment, no one moved. Then Daniel let out a slow, deliberate breath. Did we just win? He asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. I don't think so, Rachel replied cautiously. They're not surrendering, they're retreating for now, but they'll be back. Emily nodded, her face pale but resolute. And next time, they'll be better prepared. Despite the uncertainty, a wave of relief washed over the room. The immediate threat had passed, thanks to their quick thinking and teamwork. Mind had played a crucial role, decoding the aliens' language and helping craft responses that sowed discord among their ranks. Without it, humanity might not have stood a chance. As the alien ship began to move, slowly pulling away from Earth's orbit, Rachel stared at the monitors, her mind racing. She knew this wasn't the end, it was only the beginning. The aliens had shown their hand, revealing both their strength and their vulnerabilities. Humanity had survived this round, but the real challenge lay ahead. What do we do now? Emily asked quietly. We prepare, Daniel said firmly. Because they'll come back, and when they do, we'll be ready. Rachel nodded, her resolve hardening. They had faced extinction and fought back, refusing to give in to despair. That alone was a victory, however small. Humanity wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. As the alien ship disappeared into the depths of space, Rachel allowed herself a small smile. They had bought themselves some time. And in that time, they would find a way to ensure that humanity's future was secure. The alien ship was gone, but its shadow lingered. It wasn't just the memory of its dark, looming presence, it was the questions it left behind. Why had they withdrawn? What did they mean when they said they would return? And most importantly, what had humanity done to make them leave in the first place? The answers weren't clear, but one thing was certain, Earth had been given a second chance. In the days following the aliens' departure, life on the planet began to return to some semblance of normalcy. Streets that had been filled with panic were now bustling with people going about their routines. Schools reopened, businesses resumed operations, and families tried to put the crisis behind them. But beneath the surface, the tension remained. Governments around the world worked tirelessly to prepare for the aliens' inevitable return, knowing that next time they might not be so lucky. At the National Crisis Center, Rachel Monroe, Daniel Carter, and Emily Dawson continued their efforts, determined to uncover as much as they could about the aliens. Mind had become the centerpiece of their operation, its advanced algorithms tirelessly analyzing every scrap of data from the encounter. The team knew they couldn't afford to rest even if the immediate threat was gone. The future was uncertain. Rachel sat at her desk, surrounded by stacks of notes and glowing screens. Her eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep, but she refused to slow down. There was too much at stake. She leaned forward, studying a new set of patterns Mind had identified in the final transmission. "This is interesting," she murmured, tapping a finger against the screen. "Look at this section. It's almost like regret." Emily glanced over. Her curiosity piqued. "Regret? You think they felt bad about leaving?" "Not exactly," Rachel replied. "But there's something here, hesitation, maybe even doubt. Like whoever sent this message wasn't entirely convinced it was the right decision." Daniel walked over, his boots clicking against the floor. He had been coordinating with military leaders, ensuring Earth's defenses were as strong as possible. "What does that mean for us?" he asked, his tone sharp but not unkind. "It means we hit a nerve," Rachel explained. "Our last message didn't just challenge their authority, it made them question themselves. If we can keep doing that, we might be able to weaken them further." Emily nodded thoughtfully. "So, we focus on exploiting their divisions. Keep sowing discord until they fall apart." "Exactly," Rachel said. "But we need more information. We need to understand how they think, how they communicate, and why they're divided in the first place." Daniel crossed his arms, his expression grim. "That's easier said than done. They're not exactly going to hand over their secrets." "No," Rachel admitted. "But we have Mind, and we have the data from their transmissions. If we dig deep enough, we might find something useful." With that goal in mind, the team dove back into their work. Mind processed terabytes of information, searching for hidden meanings and subtle clues. The AI's ability to adapt and learn allowed it to identify patterns that would have taken humans months or even years to uncover. Slowly but surely, a clearer picture of the aliens began to emerge. What they discovered was both fascinating and unsettling. The aliens weren't a single, unified species. They were a coalition of factions, each with its own goals and motivations. Some groups believed in conquering weaker civilizations, seeing it as a way to expand their power and resources. Others, however, were more cautious, questioning the morality and practicality of such actions. These divisions ran deep, creating cracks in their otherwise formidable alliance. "They're not invincible," Rachel said during one of their late-night brainstorming sessions. "They're fractured, conflicted. If we can widen those cracks, we might be able to break them." "How do we do that?" Emily asked. "We can't exactly walk up to them and start whispering lies." "We don't need to," Rachel replied. "We use their own language against them, send messages that amplify their doubts, that make them question each other's loyalty. If we're clever enough, we won't even need to fight them directly." Daniel nodded, his earlier skepticism giving way to cautious optimism. "It's risky, but it's our best shot. Let's get to work." Over the next few weeks, the team crafted a series of carefully designed transmissions, each one tailored to exploit the aliens' internal conflicts. Using Mind's insights, they embedded subtle cues and symbols designed to resonate with specific factions. Some messages highlighted the moral implications of conquest, appealing to the more hesitant groups. Others emphasized the logistical challenges of invading Earth, targeting the pragmatist. Each transmission was a calculated move, meant to sow discord and uncertainty. The process was painstaking, requiring endless hours of analysis and refinement. But the team refused to give up. They knew that every message they sent could tip the balance in humanity's favor or provoke a devastating retaliation. The stakes were higher than ever, but they were determined to see it through. As the transmissions were sent into space, the team monitored the results closely. Mind analyzed any responses they received, searching for signs of growing tension among the alien factions. It wasn't long before they began to see evidence of success. Fragments of intercepted communications revealed heated debates and accusations, suggesting that the aliens' unity was crumbling under the weight of their own doubts. "They're turning on each other," Emily said one evening, her voice tinged with awe. "It's working." "Don't celebrate yet," Daniel warned. "They're still out there, and they still have the upper hand. This isn't over." Rachel nodded, her expression serious. "He's right. We've weakened them, but we haven't defeated them." Not yet. Despite the progress they'd made, the team knew they couldn't afford to relax. The aliens' withdrawal had bought humanity some time, but it was only a temporary reprieve. Sooner or later, they would return, and when they did, humanity would need to be ready. In the meantime, the team focused on strengthening Earth's defenses. Daniel coordinated with military leaders to develop new strategies and technologies, while Rachel and Emily worked to refine Mind's capabilities. They also collaborated with scientists and engineers around the world, pooling resources and knowledge to prepare for the next encounter. As the days turned into weeks, Rachel found herself reflecting on what they had accomplished. Against all odds, humanity had stood its ground, refusing to bow to an overwhelming threat. It wasn't just technology or strategy that had saved them, it was determination, ingenuity, and the willingness to take risks. For the first time in a long time, Rachel felt a glimmer of hope. One night, as she stared out the window at the stars, Daniel joined her. "You think we'll win?" he asked, his voice unusually soft. "I don't know," Rachel admitted. "But I do know this. We've proven that we're not helpless. We've shown them and ourselves that we can fight back. That has to count for something." Daniel nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Yeah, it does." Unbeknownst to them, far beyond the reaches of Earth's orbit, the seeds of doubt planted by Mind continued to grow. Among the alien factions, tensions simmered, threatening to boil over. The invaders' once uncheckable resolve was beginning to crack, undermined by the very beings they had sought to conquer. Humanity had survived this round, but the real battle was still to come. And somewhere deep within the cosmos, the aliens watched and waited, their plans evolving, their patience wearing thin. Months passed, and the world began to settle into a fragile sense of normalcy. The alien ship had vanished, leaving behind more questions than answers. People went back to their daily lives, but the memory of the crisis lingered like a shadow. Governments worked tirelessly behind the scenes, preparing for the aliens' return. Military bases were fortified, new technologies developed, and global alliances strengthened. Humanity wasn't just waiting, it was preparing. At the National Crisis Center, Rachel Monroe, Daniel Carter, and Emily Dawson remained at the forefront of these efforts. Mind, the AI system that had played such a crucial role in humanity's survival, continued to evolve. Its algorithms grew more sophisticated, its ability to analyze and adapt unmatched. The team used it to simulate countless scenarios, testing strategies and refining plans for when the aliens inevitably returned. Rachel spent long hours poring over data, her mind racing with possibilities. She knew the aliens weren't gone for good, they had retreated, not surrendered. Their final message, "We will return when you are ready," weighed heavily on her. What did it mean to be ready? Would they come back stronger, more unified? Or would the divisions among them continue to grow? Emily shared her concerns. "What if we're wrong about them?" she asked one evening, as the two women worked side by side. "What if they've been planning something bigger this whole time? We can't afford to think like that," Rachel replied, though her voice betrayed a hint of doubt. "All we can do is prepare for every possibility." Daniel entered the room, his usual calm demeanor tinged with urgency. "We've got something," he said, holding up a tablet. "Intercepted signals from deep space. Looks like our friends have been busy." The team gathered around as Daniel displayed the data. It was fragmented and incomplete, but Mind quickly pieced together enough to reveal a troubling picture. The aliens were regrouping, consolidating their forces. Some factions had grown stronger, while others had been marginalized or absorbed. The divisions that had once seemed like humanity's greatest advantage were beginning to fade. "They're learning from us," Emily murmured, her eyes wide with alarm. "They're fixing their weaknesses." "Not all of them," Rachel said, pointing to a section of the analysis. "There are still cracks, smaller now, but they're there. We can use that." Daniel nodded. "Then we don't stop. We keep pushing, keep sowing discord. If we can widen those cracks even a little, it might give us an edge." The team threw themselves into their work with renewed determination. They crafted new transmissions, each one designed to exploit the remaining fractures among the alien factions. Using Mind's insights, they embedded subtle messages meant to amplify doubts and fears. Some focused on the futility of conquest, others on the moral cost of destroying a sentient species. Every word, every symbol, was carefully chosen to resonate with specific groups within the alien coalition. As the transmissions were sent into space, the team monitored the results closely. Mind analyzed intercepted communications, searching for signs of tension and conflict. Slowly but surely, evidence began to emerge. Arguments erupted among the alien leaders, accusations flew, and alliances shifted. Though the invaders were growing stronger, their unity remained fragile. One night, as the team reviewed the latest data, Rachel leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. "Do you ever wonder what they really want?" she asked. "I mean, why Earth? Why now?" "It's power," Daniel said without hesitation. "They see us as weak, easy targets. Taking us out would send a message to anyone else who might challenge them. But it's more than that," Emily added. "They're scared of what we could become. Look at how fast we've adapted, how quickly we countered them. To them, we're unpredictable, dangerous." Rachel nodded, her mind racing. "Maybe that's our real advantage. Not just technology or strategical unpredictability. They can't plan for everything because they don't understand us. Daniel crossed his arms, his expression grim. Let's hope that's enough. Weeks turned into months, and the anticipation grew unbearable. The team knew the aliens were coming back, they just didn't know when. Then, one morning, alarms blared throughout the crisis center. A massive fleet of ships had appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system, far larger than anything humanity had faced before. They're here, Daniel said, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. Rachel stared at the monitors, her heart pounding. The alien ships moved with precision, forming a vast armada that dwarfed the single vessel that had visited before. This wasn't just an invasion, it was a declaration of war. The first transmission came almost immediately. The mechanical voice was colder than ever, devoid of any trace of hesitation. Your defiance ends now. Surrender or perish. Rachel took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. It's time, she said, turning to face the others. Let's show them what happens when you underestimate humanity. With Daniel coordinating military defenses and Emily monitoring mine's outputs, Rachel prepared the response. This time, the message was simple, but powerful. You may outnumber us, but you cannot break us. Your divisions make you weak. Your fear makes you blind. Leave now, or face the consequences. The transmission was sent, echoing into the void of space. For several agonizing minutes, there was no reply. Then, unexpectedly, the alien fleet hesitated. Ships paused, mid-maneuver, their movements faltering as internal communications spiked. Mine detected heated arguments and conflicting orders, suggesting that the message had struck a nerve. They're doubting again, Emily said, her voice trembling with excitement. It's working, but the victory was short-lived. One faction, within the alien coalition, led by a ruthless commander named Vorthok, seized control. His voice replaced the mechanical one, filled with anger and authority. Enough. You think your words can stop us. You are nothing but insects to be crushed. The alien fleet surged forward, closing in on Earth. The planet's defenses sprang into action, launching missiles and deploying advanced drones. The battle that followed was fierce and chaotic, lighting up the skies with explosions and energy blasts. Humanity fought valiantly, using every weapon and strategy at its disposal. Amid the chaos, Rachel, Daniel, and Emily remained in the crisis center, guiding the resistance effort. Mine played a crucial role, analyzing the aliens' tactics and identifying vulnerabilities in real. The AI's insights allowed humanity to strike where it hurt most, targeting key ships and disrupting the invaders' coordination. As the battle raged on, cracks began to form in the alien ranks. Factions that had been forced into submission by Vorthok started to rebel, questioning his leadership and motives. Messages intercepted by Mind revealed growing unrest, with some groups considering retreat. They're breaking apart, Emily exclaimed, her eyes shining with hope. We're doing it. But the cost was high. Cities burned, lives were lost, and the scars of war would take generations to heal. Still, humanity refused to give up. With every setback, they adapted, finding new ways to fight back. Finally, after days of relentless combat, the tide began to turn. The alien fleet, weakened by internal conflict and relentless human resistance, began to falter. Ship after ship withdrew, retreating into the depths of space. Vorthok's forces were left isolated, overwhelmed by the combined might of humanity's defenders. When the last alien ship disappeared from view, the world erupted in celebration. Humanity had won not through sheer strength, but through ingenuity, determination, and unity. The aliens had underestimated them, and it had cost them dearly. In the aftermath, Rachel stood outside the crisis center, gazing up at the stars. Daniel joined her, his expression weary but triumphant. We did it, he said quietly. For now, Rachel replied, her voice firm. They'll be back. But next time, we'll be ready. And somewhere far beyond the reaches of Earth's orbit, the aliens regrouped, their pride wounded but their resolve unbroken. They had learned from their defeat, vowing to return stronger and more united than ever. But so had humanity. The battle may have ended, but the war was far from over.